All right, I think we will get going here, but I'll just briefly start by introducing myself. So I'm Adam Weigel, the transit manager for Lawrence Transit. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. We'll have Boris from consultant at Foursquare walk through the couple of scenarios, pretty much on a route by route type basis. There should be plenty of time as we walk through some of this for folks to jump in and ask questions. Big picture, I'll just say we're excited to hear your thoughts and other people's thoughts throughout next couple weeks, few weeks, on these couple of draft scenarios. The idea being that the best ideas we hear from both of these scenarios will be merged into a final recommended scenario that'll come back out to the public. So hopefully there's some good ideas on what you see today, but if you see some things you like or don't like, we're interested in that. Help us get towards something that works best for everybody. So with that, I'll turn it over to Boris and take it away.
All right. Yep. Great. Thanks so much. I see some folks are still joining us. So we'll take it a little bit slow in the beginning, but yeah, as Adam was saying, today we're going to be presenting two scenarios on ways to improve transit service in Lawrence. The two scenarios have some similarities and then lots of differences. We'll be going through route by route, and again, these scenarios are not meant to be taken as a whole, but rather we can mix and match once we understand what people like and don't like about each scenario to come up with a final preferred scenario. There's a couple of terms that we'll be using quite a bit through the discussion today. One of those terms is microtransit, and the other is interlining. And what I want to do to start out is just show a really quick video about what microtransit is. Some folks may have heard the term or not quite know exactly what it means, but microtransit is a new model of transit service. It's emerged within the last few years. It's a demand response type of transit model, but it's very much app-based, kind of like Uber and Lyft. And so I'm going to just show this quick video. It's about 2 minutes to give everybody an idea of what microtransit looks like in the real world. So actually, I need to stop sharing for a second because I forgot to share with sound. So just 1 second. Okay, share with sound.
I think they're the best thing since bacon. They're on Johnny on the spot. When I need them, they've been available. And that's great. And I just need to run to the darn store for one darn thing, and here they are. The other car transport services are too expensive for a senior, you know.
So VIA, in my opinion, is like an extension to the bus service. Here we have the YOLO bus going by, and they run every hour on the hour. So riders, what they love about us is it's similar to Uber and Lyft, but it's corner to corner, and it gets them to their locations a little bit more conveniently throughout West Sacramento. There are some passengers that absolutely 100% this is their form of transportation.
I have to depend on others for transportation, and so many things need to be done during the day when my rides are not available. I'm on a mobility scooter, and so I'm rather limited as to what I can use.
It's a lot less dangerous, like especially late at night. Like if I'm a girl alone and I have to walk like at 9 o'clock at night, they have like the $10 VIA pass for all week, and you get 4 rides a day, and that's what I usually do because it's like so much cheaper. Sometimes you meet new people on the rides. That's pretty cool. You get to make friends, and I just really enjoy it. I really hope that it stays. Like I would die if it didn't. I like if it went away, I would be like on the phone with the mayor. Like, what are you doing? I need this back.
All right, so that gives you kind of a bit of an idea of what microtransit looks like. We'll be talking about where we are recommending microtransit as we go along. We're going to go through the scenarios route by route using Google Earth. There's a number of layers that I have available to kind of turn on and off, toggle on and off to help us understand why we're doing certain things like points of interest. That's places, key destinations that routes serve. Things like existing ridership, we have that at the stop level. And the layer that I have on now is called transit potential, and it kind of shows based on density where in the Lawrence area there's more or less potential to support fixed route transit service. So the areas that are yellow, orange, and red are higher density, meaning they are more likely to support fixed route service. Areas that are green and gray are lower density. All right, so let's begin. We're going to go through route by route, and we can when we look at the routes, we also have the ability to compare them to existing service or a route from one scenario to the other. So, for example, the orange line here is the proposed Route 1 in scenario 1, and then the blue line is the current Route 1 in scenario 1 that we can look at. So, Route 1, Scenario 1, operates between downtown and the East Hills Business Park. The main difference from the current Route 1 is that it shifts service from Haskell to Massachusetts, from the Haskell corridor to the Massachusetts corridor to serve Dillon's. And then it also is extended from the current end of the line. The current Route 1 serves the community shelter and the jail. The proposed Route 1 is extended to also include the East Hills Business Park. That's to sort of create a more a greater mix of uses that this route would support and would generate ridership sort of throughout the day based on all of the land uses that it serves, from residential to retail, grocery stores, to the shelter and the jail, and then the East Hills Business Park. This route is proposed for interlining. So interlining is another term I said we'd hear a lot about. So what interlining is when a bus completes a route. Sometimes a bus, instead of returning on the same route, instead you can have a route sort of alternate between a bus alternate between two different routes. So in other words, if a bus comes out on Route 1 and that route is interlined with Route 5, then the bus then returns on Route 5 instead of Route 1. And this is the proposed Route 5, sorry. So what that means is the bus just changes its head sign once it gets to the end of the line, changes its head sign from Route 1 to Route 5, and then it goes out on Route 5, and then it comes back from Route 5, changes head sign again, and goes back on Route 1. That allows for clean connections. So for example, if you have a connection point between two routes, if they're not interlined, then it's possible that the buses sort of miss each other and you miss a connection. This guarantees that there is definitely no missed connection because it's the same bus. It allows for what's called one-seat rides. So a person can stay on a bus. Let's say if the interline happens at East Hills Business Park, but a person is trying to get from the 23rd Street corridor to the community shelter on Route 5. Once they get to East Hills Business Park, they can stay on, and then that same bus goes to the shelter. And then the last reason to do interlining is sort of a behind the scenes operational reason. Sometimes routes aren't quite the right length to provide the service frequency that you're trying to provide on it. So if you can combine two routes of different lengths, you can sometimes achieve a total cycle time that allows for more convenient service frequencies. So let's say you want to achieve 30-minute frequency on both routes. If the entire cycle takes an hour, then two vehicles on that combined route, two vehicles operating concurrently, can operate with 30-minute service frequency on either route. So I'll just pause there because I know I threw out a lot there, but are there any questions about either the concept of interlining or what we're showing here for the proposed Route 1? Okay. If not, then I will move on to the next route. This is Route 3, and I will also show the current Route 3 because it's quite different. The current Route 3, as you probably know, operates from downtown through both the, it operates a fairly large one-way loop where part of the route operates on Iowa Street and another on Michigan. And the result of that is you have one-way service both in the Michigan Street corridor and the Iowa Street corridor. So a person trying to get to the Michigan Street corridor may end up having to ride out of direction before finally getting to where they want to go, because there's one-way service only. Ridership on this route is most concentrated south of Lawrence Memorial Hospital, or Lawrence Memorial Hospital and points south. Ridership to the north is fairly light. I can bring that up here real quick. As you see, there's fairly light ridership north of the hospital. We believe that in part that's because there is only one-way service north of the hospital, so that really makes for fairly inconvenient service for prospective riders. So what we're proposing instead with Route 3 is two changes. One change is actually extending the route from downtown to the east to run by the Amtrak station, and then down to the 9th Street corridor here, where there's a lot of sort of new development and redevelopment happening. And then on the other end, running the route from the Memorial Hospital down to the new Bob Billings Transit Hub. So the idea here is that the hospital is fairly easily accessible, both from the traditional downtown hub and from the Bob Billings Hub. So anybody that makes it to either of these places has fairly direct connection, a direct connection to the hospital. Areas to the north where the current Route 3 operates, if the Route 3 did not operate there anymore, that could be served by microtransit service. And that kind of looks like this. The way that we have microtransit envisioned in scenario 1 is a zonal structure. So there's actually four zones where people could request a microtransit vehicle on demand. I think I need to turn off this and turn on this. So a person within the zone could request a microtransit vehicle, and then they would be able to use that vehicle within the zone. If they wanted to travel beyond the zone's boundaries, sort of crosstown connection, they would connect from the microtransit service to a fixed route, and then potentially, transfer to another microtransit service on the other end if they needed to make another connection. But that's we're using microtransit to help fill some gaps. So areas where we're proposing to eliminate service, microtransit would remain an option because it essentially covers the entire service area, the entire Lawrence transit service area. Okay, any thoughts on Route 3? Okay, so then we will continue to Route 4. I'll turn these guys off and I'll turn this back on. All right, so Route 4, as shown here, the idea is to consolidate the current Route 4 and Route 6 corridors and alignments and have a single route that begins in North Lawrence and ends at the LMH West campus and travels via the 6th Street corridor and Rock Chalk Park and Walmart and other destinations along 6th Street. So the idea here is to provide direct access for folks from North Lawrence to a number of retail destinations, grocery destinations, Walmart, and medical facilities without having to transfer. The other change here is in North Lawrence itself. There's a shift of service from the Lion Street corridor here to North Street. And the reason for that is that there's a mobile home park on North Street that has, we believe, some ridership potential, but right now service isn't very convenient for them. So shifting from Lion to North Street may increase ridership there. Any thoughts on that? That is Route 4. Okay. So this is Route 5, and as I mentioned, it will be interlined with Route 1. So folks could get to the East Hills Business Park or to the jail or community shelter, either from the Bob Billings hub, which is here, or from downtown. You'll see there's a pattern emerging where Bob Billings hub is kind of being built up as a very important hub in the system. So once you make your way to the Bob Billings hub, you can make your way to most key destinations in the study area or in the service area. So the primary difference between the current Route 5 and the proposed Route 5, other than the fact that it is interlined, is the current Route 5 does not serve the Bob Billings corridor or the Bob Billings hub. Instead, the current alignment goes down south on Iowa Street to Walmart and Target and all the retail down there. Instead, one other change is that the current Route 5 heads down into the Haskell campus. And what we're proposing instead is a deviation from 23rd Street, not into the Haskell campus, but rather a deviation to serve the high concentration of multifamily housing apartment complexes that are located close to Iowa Street, the 23rd and Iowa Street intersection. There's quite a bit of housing here. So this provides direct access to those folks and gets them a one-seat ride to the Bob Billings hub, as well as to the East Hills Business Park, the shelter, the jail, and so on. So that's, there will be other service that's still going to the Iowa, down here to the Iowa Street retail, but not this route. Okay. We can continue to Route 7. So Route 7 is, it would actually serve that all the retail down on south side of Iowa Street. Route 7 would operate between downtown and the Reserve on West 31st Street. That's apartment complex here. The whole the aim of this route is to connect the Haskell Avenue corridor, where there's a lot of multifamily housing and some low-income multifamily housing, Douglas County housing, to provide those folks a one-seat ride both to downtown and to retail destinations, especially down in the South Iowa corridor. So the Walmart and the Target. There's also Checkers right here. So these folks would have direct access to retail, to groceries, to connections downtown, and job access opportunities as well, especially retail job access opportunities. This route would also be interlined with Route 11. So this is Route 11. Route 11 would operate from the Bob Billings hub, not quite through the KU campus, but adjacent to the KU campus, probably close enough on 19th Street for some people to walk into campus. It would head down Naismith Street, again, serve this area south of 23rd that has a high concentration of multifamily housing. And then this route would end at the Reserve, but it would interline with Route 7. So in other words, if a person comes along this route, once they get to the Reserve, that same bus changes its head sign and they have a one-seat ride to Target and to Walmart and to all the other retail destinations here. And similarly, people that come down Route 7, they have a one-seat ride to the Bob Billings hub via this interline connection.
How long is that route supposed to take?
So
from the hub to downtown, because that looks like it would be like a good 45-minute ride.
Yeah, from the hub to downtown, this is not the only way that a person could get from the hub to downtown. There's another route we'll show here in a minute that is a much more direct option. So very few people would ride this route all the way around. But the reason to do an interline is that on the sort of point at the end of every route, it's hard to draw the line exactly to say, okay, the market for where people want to go on a particular route ends here. Usually there's sort of a tapering off. So people that ride this route from the Naismith corridor, some of them may want to go to Target, some of them may want to go to Walmart, some of them may want to go a little bit further. And it's this interline allows people from both corridors to access destinations that are on on another route's corridor without having to transfer. And it sort of helps bridge this transitional zone between two routes where the ridership is not like a clean break where, okay, all the ridership wants to go only to Walmart, because some people may want to go a little bit beyond that Walmart to the Target and so on. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I guess I'll just have to wait to see about the other routes, because 11, of course, is the big student route. So.
Yep. So right, 11 is a big student route. I think that many of the students would be coming from the the multifamily housing along this route, sort of along the Iowa corridor, and once they get to the Bob Billings hub, you'll see as we go along, there will be quite frequent and a number of routes operating between the hub and campus. So once they make their way here, they'll have fast and frequent service to campus. But we'll get to those routes in a minute. Okay. The next route we'll talk about is Route 9. So Route 9 would operate from South Iowa and all these retail destinations we've been talking about to Clinton and Wakarusa. The main difference from the current 9 is that the current 9 continues further up the Wakarusa corridor all the way up to Free State High School and the Walmart Supercenter through there. This alignment would not do that. It would end at Clinton and Wakarusa. And this route is aimed really at connecting folks along the Clinton Parkway corridor and all the apartments south of the Clinton Parkway corridor into these retail destinations. This route would, however, be interlined in this scenario with Route 29, which serves the same residential areas, but instead of taking those residential areas down to retail destinations, instead it takes them to the Bob Billings hub where they can connect to the university or to downtown. So routes would alternate, the buses would alternate between the 9 and the 29, the 29 and the 9. Okay. The next route is Route 10. So the current Route 10 looks similar, but a little bit different. The current Route 10 goes all the way downtown. Instead, the proposed Route 10 would end at the Bob Billings hub, but on the other end, instead of ending at Free State High School and the Walmart Supercenter, instead it would extend to LMH West and pick up areas of North Wakarusa Drive that have, again, quite a few multifamily housing communities on them. So more ridership opportunities through here that are really not currently being served. So that's really the main point of this route, is to provide additional service up here to the multifamily housing. And then again, many connection opportunities at the hub. Okay. Then we have Route 11, which we talked about. Route 27 is the next route. Route 27 is a route that is aimed at linking together a number of educational institutions in Lawrence. So on the south side, you have the Peasley Center here. Then you have Haskell Indian Nations University here, Lawrence High School, KU, and then ending at the Bob Billings hub. So if a person can make their way to the Bob Billings hub, then they have access to all of these educational institutions. There's also some value in connecting them all together, because there is some amount of, I guess, cross registration, perhaps is a way to say it. So some people may be at Haskell taking some classes, KU, or maybe even at the high school taking some classes at one of the campuses. But this is a route that's meant to link together all the educational institutions. Next, we have 29, which we talked about already. Okay, the next route is Route 100. So Route 100 is intended to be a fast and frequent connection between the Bob Billings hub, KU, and downtown. So it's a fairly simple route that just goes back and forth between these 3 key destinations. It could potentially operate as what's called a BRT service down the line, bus rapid transit. That's a type of service where you have very frequent service. Sometimes you have specialized vehicles that are kind of uniquely branded to sort of convey that it's a very high frequency service. Okay. So the next few routes are focused a lot on KU. I guess maybe I'll pause here for a second to see if there's any comments or questions. I can turn all of the routes we talked about so far on. Oops. Oh, I just messed that up.
You want to highlight, David had sent me a message and I was starting to type out a response, but it might be worth talking through it a little bit. Could we turn on Route 4 again?
Sure.
And look up in the area of like Free State and
yes. Okay, I'll just turn 4 on.
So you could zoom in kind of that area around there. So I know under this example, we, in lieu of the one-way loop that has typically happened from 6th, Oaks, Overland, Wakarusa, we now have the 2-way service along that area. There are some good destinations south of 6th Street there with the Dillons, and I know there's some dense apartments at Rohan Ridge, name of those. So it's one of those trade-offs, right, between deciding if, you know, there's challenges with having one-way loops in areas like this. It's also, there's maybe an argument for that. The other piece of it too is that there's an overlaid microtransit zone service. So it's kind of, you know, as I think as more details come in about microtransit and kind of what that service model looks like and where people could go, that could be a reasonable alternative. I wanted to throw some of that out there and see if, I don't know, David has anything to add, or Boris, you have any thoughts or reactions to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right, that there are opportunities. I'll just turn on the microtransit again and turn this off. So you can kind of start seeing the bigger picture on a couple of things. One is you're absolutely right about the bi-directional aspect of the service, where that's one of the design principles that we've tried to implement with all the routes to maximize the bi-directional service. One-way loops tend to be inconvenient because it forces out of direction travel for people, at least in one, whether they're coming or they're going. The current Route 4, actually, was it current Route 3? Sorry, current Route 3 was an example of a large one-way loop that really just never resonated with riders. So we're trying to reduce one-way loops to the greatest extent possible, and they're in some places unavoidable based on the roadway network. So there are some travel patterns that force one-way service, and it's a bit unavoidable, but for the most part we've tried to make every single route bi-directional. When you make a route bi-directional, it means that if you come to a destination, let's say you come to the Walmart, to go back, all you do is cross the street. So every bus stop has its opposite bus stop simply on the other side of the street. So it makes it a very simple navigation process versus trying to remember, you know, where you catch the bus or having to ride out of direction before you get to go back to where you're coming from. This also shows kind of how the microtransit and fixed route network work together. So again, if you have a zone structure for the microtransit service, you can use microtransit for local trips. But if you want to take a further trip, you may end up sort of being fed into in this case, Route 6 for a trip downtown, and from there you can connect to other routes. But the two work together, and the microtransit trips are intended to be fairly short trips, because microtransit works best when there's a lot of turnover and the trips aren't very long, but rather people are constantly sort of, boarding and lighting, so you can get more people through in a given hour. Joe, you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, this may or may not be taken into account, but it would seem to make sense to have the microtransit zones all converge on the hub so that you could get a ride to the hub from whence you could get a ride anywhere else pretty much in the city except for Route 4. Has that been considered at all?
Yes. So you mean the Bob Billings hub?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this case, that's sort of how this is kind of intended to work. So the Bob Billings hub is right at the intersection of basically 3 of these zones. And the intent is, it would be a point where people could make connections. It's not drawn exactly that way. It's the exact details are still being worked out, but yes, every one of the zones is intended to have some sort of major hub in it. So whether it's the downtown hub or the Bob Billings hub, every one of these zones, we want to create opportunities to allow people to transfer to fixed route service. The microtransit should be complementary of fixed route service without necessarily competing against or cannibalizing the ridership of the fixed route service. So so you're absolutely right. The hub would be served by in this case 3, and then downtown would be served by two of the zones. This also.
I might just add because this is I think a conversation I've been having with some different people as we've been out doing outreach, where I think as we clarify details about microtransit, it'll talk with people about that more. It will make a great deal of difference exactly how long people have to wait to get a microtransit vehicle, how challenging that is to do, either through an app or through a phone call. We want that process to be very smooth and easy, because I think that the goal would be that in places that fixed route service would no longer serve, but would instead be served by microtransit, we don't want that experience to be worse. We don't want it to be harder, longer wait, that sort of thing. So I think that's a piece. I think maybe I don't always have like that explicit conversation with people, but that might be in folks' heads, is that, the fixed route service that I'm used to, I know exactly how that works. And this on-demand service, if that's my only option or a new option, is it as good? Is it as simple to access? So I think we got a lot of work to do right there.
I wasn't clear. Is that going to go from fixed points as well, or is that coming to your house or wherever you are?
So microtransit operates in different, there's a few different ways that you can operate it. One way is called curb to curb, where it's literally to your house and then to your final destination. Another approach is called corner to corner. That means that once you make your reservation, Joe, have you ever used Uber or Lyft?
Yeah, not very much though.
Not much, but so microtransit is dispatched in the interface is very similar to Uber and Lyft. So you do it through usually an app on your phone or your tablet, although a call-in option also exists. But once you make that the booking through your app, the app will tell you meet your driver at the end of your block. So the aim of that is to improve the hourly productivity of the service, rather than having vehicles go into every cul-de-sac, every residential street. Instead, people walk a block or half a block to meet it, to allow it to be more productive in terms of trips per hour. Both of those are approaches that are in use in different places now. With microtransit, also every user creates a profile. So if a person in their profile has that they are disabled, for example, then they may have the ability to get a curb to curb trip, whereas somebody else may be corner to corner.
I'm also realizing the way I had the chat set up, people could only chat me. So I changed that so it comes to everyone now. But I'll just highlight another good comment from David about asking if microtransit is essentially T-Lift that everyone is eligible for, and would it be more expensive than fixed route?
It's similar to T-Lift. The difference between T-Lift and microtransit is the immediacy, I guess, of it. And with T-Lift, you do have to book in advance, and then you do have to kind of negotiate a pickup time and be available within a window. I believe it's a 30-minute window. Is that right for T-Lift? So yeah, so with microtransit, it's much more conducive to trips, sort of spontaneous trips. So just like Uber and Lyft, where you decide, okay, I need to go to the store, grab a gallon of milk. You just go on the app in real time, reserve the trip. In real time, you see where the vehicle is, and you can follow it as it comes to you, and then you just go outside, just in time as it arrives. So it's a much more responsive model because it makes use of the evolution in technology that is now available, and most people have. Most people have smart devices now. As far as the fares go, it's a good question. So microtransit fares are set by the public, whatever public entity is overseeing the service. And so the fares would be set by Lawrence Transit or KU or both, and they can set those fares as they wish to set them. So it's sort of a fare policy is often used to incentivize certain things. So if you want to incentivize, for example, fixed route service, you may set the fares for microtransit to be a little bit higher than fixed route service. You can also do that geographically. So if you're within, let's say, a half mile of a fixed route, maybe microtransit trips within a half mile buffer of a fixed route would be a little bit more expensive. But if you're in an area with no other service, then maybe the fares are lower and comparable to fixed route service. So there's the fares haven't been determined yet, but my point is that the fares are a reflection of policy decisions and prioritization that the agency would like to sort of push one way or the other. One other thought about that is compared to Uber and Lyft, which microtransit operates very much like Uber and Lyft. The difference, though, is that fares for microtransit are far more predictable and far more affordable than Uber and Lyft. With Uber and Lyft, you have distance-based pricing, and then you also occasionally have surge pricing, so you don't actually know what you'll be charged until your trip is complete. With microtransit, even if you have distance-based pricing, which we will talk about in scenario 2, if you have distance-based pricing, it's something like, let's say, $2 for the first 3 miles, and then maybe 50 cents for every mile after that. And you'll know in advance as you're booking your trip, as you put in your destination, you'll know in advance this trip will cost me $3 or $5, whatever the distance you're traveling, versus Uber and Lyft, where you just really don't know until you're done. In scenario 1, we're kind of envisioning flat fares, but flat fares limited to these zonal restrictions. In scenario 2, which we'll talk about later, instead we have a single coverage zone for the entire city and distance-based pricing. So in both cases, the aim is to limit the length of microtransit trips so that they're not so long that vehicles are out of service and sort of unproductive, but rather a series of shorter trips so you can have more trips per hour.
One thing I might highlight from what you said, Boris, just from our Lawrence Transit perspective, is we do not want to disadvantage people who just don't live close to a fixed route, right? So we want people to have access to the transit system. In some cases, that might be through microtransit. So it would be the intention not to penalize people at the fare box who just may not live close to where a fixed route is. So that'll guide some of our decision making.
There's also the possibility of implementing just one of these zones or some subset of one of these zones in the short term and then others over time. I mean, we split the entire Lawrence Transit Service area up into zones, but this zone in particular has maybe more areas that are currently covered but would not be in the scenario being proposed. So maybe this northern zone would be the first one to be implemented as a pilot, as a trial, and then others could follow. So we're still, again, these scenarios are still a bit fluid. We're just trying to get people's opinions and thoughts on these things. All right. So let's move on then to the KU area. and service to KU. So let me turn off the microtransit service. All right, we'll start with Route 34. So this is the Route 34 here. It would operate between the West 7th Street corridor up here, where you have concentration between 6th and 7th Street of multifamily housing. A lot of students live up there. It would operate between there and the West 25th Street corridor down here, which we've talked a lot about already, where again, you have a high concentration of off-campus housing. So this route really combines several existing KU-focused routes, so Route 34, Route 41, and Route 38. It creates a longer route than any of those three, but by having a longer route, it allows more flexibility in scheduling in order to provide the right frequency of service at the right time of the day to ensure that the service being provided is in line with demand. But from these two ends of the line, which are mostly residential, you have service through the remote parking areas, through the heart of campus, the Union, and then out to the other residential area. So any questions on that?
Hey, Boris, this is Quiz. I just wanted to add that I know, I think we've discussed this a little bit, but there is currently discussion going on right now about the park and ride areas and, maybe public-private partnerships being developed in some of those areas right in there where that cursor's at. So I don't know, what the future of that looks like. There's a lot of big dogs at KU that are more privy to that information than we are at this time, but that could ultimately maybe affect, how that lines up right now. So just a quick FYI for everybody.
Sure. Okay. So that's Route 34. Next, we'll talk about 36. So 36, the alignment for 36 is quite similar to the current Route 36. The main difference is an extension from the current end of the line down to the Bob Billings hub. So currently the route ends along the 6th Street corridor. In this scenario, it also heads down to the hub. So if you're in the 6th Street corridor, you would have essentially two ways into campus, one direct, one-seat ride like this, another with a transfer with frequent service from Bob Billings, the Bob Billings hub. It also just creates an option for people from the Bob Billings hub to get up to the 6th Street corridor. There's service on Castle here as well. I think we've had some debate on if that corridor should or shouldn't have service, but in this scenario, it does. So any thoughts on that? Okay. The next route we'll talk about is Route 41. So this is a route that operates between Becker Drive, which is this circle here that Quiz was just talking about with these park and ride lots, and the Union. The route also serves Stewart Street here. This weird sort of zigzag alignment is because 21st Street is not signalized. So it's not really feasible for buses to cross from here to get to Becker Drive. So instead, we have service coming through here to pick up the Stewart Street apartments, the 19th Street, and then up through Naismith Drive near the rec center, and then through the heart of campus, Jayhawk Boulevard, and then ending serving the Union. Any thoughts on that one? Compared to the current, the main difference between the current Route 41, and there's a few differences, but one big difference is that the current 41 does not serve the Union. Instead, it does a one-way loop through goes Sunnyside Avenue to Sunflower to Jayhawk. So it's a one-way loop that way. So this would extend instead to the Union.
So is there actually going to be a stop at Naismith and Irving Hill so that people can get out and walk to ISB and Burge Union if they need to?
Yeah, the recommendation would be to put stops as close as possible to Naismith and Sunnyside and Naismith and Irving Hill. So
This
that,
is Margareta DeFries. We have bus stops there. It's just that this route would use existing stops.
yep. But it's a good question, because Sunnyside, for example, if this route were not to go down Sunnyside, this would be the closest access point to the destinations along Sunnyside. So either from Jayhawk Boulevard, people could come down, or from Naismith, they could come over to Sunnyside this way. Okay. So this is the 42 route. It actually is fairly similar to the 41 in that it also serves the Union. It has more direct access to the rec center. So it comes through here, and then it ends at the Bob Billings hub rather than the park and ride lots here. So 41 and 42 sort of, like I said, they're similar, but serve different markets. Maybe one serves the park and ride folks. The other one serves people making connections at the Bob Billings hub. So this does operate along Irving Hill Road and then down 18th Street to the rec center. And then it has the same alignment as the 41 going to the Union. Okay. And then the last route in scenario 1 is the 43, which is identical to the current 43. So no change there. It's a pretty strong route. It connects the Irving Hill and Daisy Hill area to the heart of campus and the Jayhawk Boulevard and the Union. So no changes to this route. Okay, so that is scenario 1. Now, any questions before we move on to scenario 2?
Do you see one from Elizabeth in the chat about expected time for, you mean like frequency, Elizabeth, like how often the bus would come?
Yeah, beforehand Route 41 was like, well, on the most high time of classes, it was every 15 minutes. But what is the expected new loop for the proposed 41?
So we haven't yet assigned service characteristics to these routes. We're focusing first on coverage, and then we'll focus on frequency. But a route like 41 would likely have a very similar service frequency to the current Route 41. It's a KU focused route, so those routes generally have high frequency during peak periods. So I would expect it to be virtually the same as the current Route 41.
I'm wondering, you said that there was going to be frequent service between KU and the Bob Billings Transit Center, but I'm not seeing a bus that does that. Is that just going to be something separate, or?
No, so that's this route here, the Route 100. So the Route 100 goes from the Bob Billings hub through the 15th Street corridor, Jayhawk Boulevard, the Union, and then goes through downtown and back. So this is the connection between downtown and KU.
Yeah, I guess I'm just concerned because unless that goes like, every 5 minutes or so, like you're kind of stranding international students, from getting out to Walmart and that kind of stuff without adding another, 10, 15 minutes to their trip each way, because they have to go out to the transit center and then go down to Walmart, and the trip's already like a half an hour, and I'm guessing it's not going to be much shorter from the transit center down to Walmart. So I guess, you're talking about an hour and a half that they have to spend traveling to go down to Walmart and back.
Hey, Mindy,
Sure.
this is Quiz. We haven't talked about this really in our big group, but I know Margaret and I have had conversations about what that looks like going back and forth. And it may mean that we have a little shuttle going back and forth from the transit hub and just, dropping off at Daisy Hill or dropping off at Jayhawk Towers to catch one of the circulators. It may mean that there's just something, maybe a little quicker thing going up to Cayo Water Fountain and just does a little quick loop from Cayo to the transfer hub, Cayo to transfer hub. We recognize that. We just haven't quite figured out what that might look like yet.
Okay. Is there going to be a lot of parking out at the Bob Billings Hub?
The current plan for the Bob Billings Hub is not for it to be a park and ride type facility.
Because I'm curious because, like, you have a lot of routes that are going out to these apartments, but they're not really going to campus very directly. And I'm wondering if that's going to help, because like we have a parking problem on campus. It's a major problem. You can't ever find spots, especially in the student areas. So like, it would be great if some of these alleviated some of that parking problem, but if they're not going directly to campus, I have my doubts.
Yeah. Well, so some of the routes, like this 34, for example, this is intended to provide direct service through campus for folks that live in some of the most high density student housing, off-campus student housing areas. So, the area along here on the 25th Street corridor, 23rd, 24th, 25th, this area here, as well as the 6th and 7th Street corridor. So this route does provide direct access to campus. As far as the Walmart goes, so there would be two routes that from the Bob Billings Hub. The Route 100 would be a very high frequency service. So I'm not sure about every 5 minutes, but likely every 10 minutes is quite reasonable. So you'd have fast and frequent connections from campus to the Bob Billings Hub. From there, you could connect to one Walmart or to the other Walmart. This one would be through an inner line, of course, but all of the key destinations around all the key retail destinations would be served quite easily from the Bob Billings Hub, and then there would be fast connections to campus. So.
Hey, Mindy, This is Quiz again. I know you mentioned parking. I'd love to chat with you about, challenges, any ideas or suggestions you have. I know lot 90s are one lot that obviously the yellow commuter that's busting at the seams, it seems like, but we also have just 3 minutes away, a 3-minute walk. We have 3 or 4 other yellow commuter lots. I think the students just look for convenience sometimes, try to get that front door parking instead of maybe taking another minute or two and finding the other open lots. But if you have any other suggestions or comments on that, I'd love to kind of pick your brain on that to get some ideas from you too.
Okay. I mean, I think a lot of it is maybe that like I've been here on campus for 5 years and I'm not sure where the other yellow lots are. I mean, granted, I haven't really looked at them, but I also drive a van around for our international students a lot too. So maybe they're just, I don't know.
Mindy, you have a really good perspective. So for the international students, tell me where is the concentration of international students? You said they want to go to Walmart.
I mean,
where are they living?
It depends. I mean, like a lot of them live on campus, but they also live, down like at the Connection and, obviously at Meadowbrook, which shouldn't be a problem because that's really close to, the Bob Billings Hub and stuff. But there's a lot of them in all of the ones like down on south of 23rd Street, all those apartment complexes, not those central ones. Most of them are not in those ones. They are the ones like a little bit further out. The Reserve, the Connection, right down by Walmart, which some of them have their own buses. But there's a ton of international students that don't or can't afford their own cars and, really use transit. So just like, for them, I mean, some of them are, willing to take the bus just because they don't have any choices, but like just extending the trip to a 40-minute trip is really concerning. And I mean, I don't know exactly how long that blue line is going to be, the number 11, I guess it is, but I'm guessing at least 30, maybe
Yeah.
20.
You mean from campus to the
Yeah, I mean,
reserve?
if you're just getting, going down to Walmart, or I mean, if they
Mhm.
live down in there at the connection or the reserve or wherever, it's going to take them quite a while to get to campus.
And Mindy, I think that's one thing we need to consider still too as a group. Some of those off-campus routes go directly from an apartment complex directly to KU. That strategically is just how it's been.
Right.
And now we're trying to strategically go from off-campus locations to a hub and then to KU. And that may be a challenge, and we may need to consider, what are there other alternatives for that, from at least from the student population, and more specifically the international students.
Well, and I think it
So-
would be really beneficial to look at which apartment complexes have their own shuttle, because then you could kind of really concentrate on the ones that don't, because there are a lot of international students down closer to the Walmart area, or like I'm over by Wakarusa, Inverness area, and there's like along just south of 23rd, there's a lot of international students there too, and over in that route.
Mindy, this is
yeah.
Margareta DeFries from Transportation Services. Is there an avenue through which we could help promote the survey that's going along with this information out to international students that I could work with you on next week?
Yeah,
make
probably.
sure that they have a chance to see it and react to it, so that we get all of their input too.
I think it would be good if we can get Tiffany Learned involved on this, because she hasn't been able to make a lot of the meetings before because she's just been really busy.
Why don't you and I set something up for next week then?
Okay, yeah, because
get on that.
She would have even a better perspective than I do, because she works with, like, we have our certain population, and I'm aware of the other international students, but I don't have as good a knowledge as she would about where they live and what they need to do. So that would probably be a good idea, Margareta.
I'll send you a note.
I will have to say that it was probably operator error, but when the first email came out to take the survey and to look at the proposed, I had a very difficult time trying to find what the proposals were even. And so I backed out of it completely and didn't even go on to do the rest of the survey, because I was under the impression, I was like, how can I answer any questions if I can't even find what the proposals are? So I will admit it was probably operator error on my part, but if I had problems with it, I guarantee you other people had problems with it too.
Yeah, I know the most recent one. That's why I'm here, because I couldn't access those things. And, I've just been a part of this from the beginning, so I wanted to come anyways. But, I think, for international students also, we need to consider that, their language skills are oftentimes not able to kind of digest this whole thing. It's a lot for them to figure out. So maybe, trying to make something more simplified that would focus, something for them would be helpful. I don't know if that's possible or not, or feasible, even if it's possible.
We're planning a couple of more tabling events in Jayhawk Walk and the Union in the next 2 weeks. We don't have dates or time set for those yet, but once I have those, I can also send those to encourage students to come see it in person and talk to us about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a listserv that goes out to all international students once a week, so we can definitely, get stuff on that as long as we know about them in advance. So yeah, that's a possibility.
I'd be more than happy to hold a session like this for international students as well. If you guys want to organize something like that, I'd be more than happy to talk them through it, because ultimately I think, share the same goals as you, Mindy. We want to have the most direct service possible between areas with high concentrations of riders, in this case, international students, and places where they want to go. So if we're not achieving that, I think we actually are in either this scenario or the next. We haven't talked about the next scenario yet, but these routes, they look maybe a little bit overwhelming, but they are fairly direct, like from the reserve to campus. This doesn't go directly into campus
Right.
in this scenario, although in the next scenario, you'll see it does. But, in the 19th Street gets you close. Some people may find that close enough to walk.
Right.
Other people may choose to go to the Bob Billings hub and then catch a bus that would be among the various buses that go from Bob Billings into campus. It would be 5-minute service, some more direct, some going to the south of campus, some going to the north of campus, but there would be very fast and frequent service between campus and the KU hub. I'm interested, Quiz, you mentioned, some shuttles from here to key destinations. Where would those additional shuttles go? What are the missing links here?
We don't know, but you're hearing from Mindy, the missing link is getting students directly to campus in a shorter amount of time. And so again, I think what we just need to be cognizant of on the KU side of things is if there's a route, like say, for example, the blue route, that's not going directly through campus, and it is causing more time. It just will. And so from a student perspective, that's not going to be as convenient. And so what we need to outweigh is we're trying to get all of our routes to kind of coordinate up with the hub. That totally makes sense. We may have to do one or two that don't coordinate with the hub, or we need to figure a way to have a little quick shuttle back and forth that get folks from the hub to campus. And it could look like I said, dropping folks off at Daisy Hill to then they catch a circulator. It could look like we're, going all the way through and doing a quick drop off at Kyle Water Fountain. So it gets them much closer to the middle of campus instead of 19th Street. So, 19th Street to Kyle Fountain, that's 15-minute difference,
right?
With a walk, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest is let's go through scenario 2. You may find that scenario 2 meets the needs of foreign students in particular a little bit better, and let's discuss, because I think it would be a shame to go through this whole exercise of redesigning the entire transit network and then also having to do overlays on top of that because there are missing gaps. I think this is the opportunity to identify those missing gaps and to address them. Hopefully, that's what I hope ultimately we do address all those missing gaps.
Well, it would be, but that's what microtransit also is, in essence. We're overlaying service over fixed route to cover the gaps.
Sure. Yep. Okay, so let's talk about scenario 2 real quick.
Before we get into it, I know we need to get into scenario 2, but just Dave's question in the chat about routes operating year round. I don't know if you or Quiz want to address that at all. I think the thing I would say in general is that
that's a big one.
The resources that the university puts into the system using student fees, the resources that the city puts into the system are probably are expected to remain the same level. It's just about how we distribute those resources. So it may be that we could find a way on some future coordinated routes to spread out that service so it happens throughout the year. But I think that's coming as we start assigning where our dollars go for revenue.
Yeah, really good point. I think Quiz kind of hit on it too in his statement that microtransit is sort of meant to bridge gaps, and that could be part of the solution. So if you had a route like the 34, let's say, that is an important route to the KU community, but then it also does serve these multifamily housing areas that maybe graduate students live there, maybe they need to get to campus year round. If that route goes away, the idea is that microtransit would hopefully be a service that would operate year round. So a person that lives on 7th Street or 25th Street, if that route goes away, they could utilize microtransit in its place, which is usually a lower cost option operationally anyway, to provide service where fixed route service is not justifiable, because there's a point of diminishing return, both but time of day and day of the year, when it just doesn't make sense necessarily to continue operating fixed route service. Just the ridership declines to the point where you say, okay, does it really make sense? But microtransit helps fill that gap. And so that's part of the vision as well.
Yeah, and David, just real quick, from the KU's portion of the funding that comes from the student government, that comes from the required campus fees. Those, we don't anticipate an increase in those dollars. As a matter of fact, if anything, we may be looking at decreases in that. So, that's the golden question. Will the routes that KU have been kind of servicing from the student perspective, will those maybe be year round? If we could do that, it may mean that instead of buses being 30-minute headway, it may mean that they're 1 hour headway, right? It may mean less frequency to try to get something year round. That is a scenario. It's not the only scenario, but that, just to tell you, I don't anticipate our funding dollars increasing from a student perspective.
Yeah, I think this is a really important question for at least my particular unit in international affairs, because we have the majority of our student groups come in during the summer. And this has always been a huge issue for us, is not having the buses on campus during the summer and, basically being reduced to the number 11 and it coming at, like an hour interval. It's definitely, we're not the biggest population. During the summer, we're a fairly big population. Sometimes we have 4 groups and we're looking at, 100, 150 students, and we're looking at ways at growing. But, if all the KU routes, go away during the summer as they typically do, and all the, the city routes are mostly just going to the service center, this is definitely going to be an issue to think about. And thank you for whoever brought it up.
Okay. Are there any more chat comments, Adam, that I should address?
I don't believe so, but I'll keep my eye on it.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to scenario 2. And let me turn off this. Okay, in scenario 2, we are also envisioning microtransit, but in a different way. It would be a citywide zone that would incorporate distance-based pricing, as I mentioned earlier. So if it's a short trip, it would be a flat fare of, let's say, $2 maybe. And then as you go further away, then you add additional cost, maybe past 3 miles or so. There's also a kind of an overlay for the KU area. There would also be a microtransit overlay, but it would allow for higher service frequency, potentially later service hours to meet the not service frequency, but rather shorter wait times and longer hours than maybe is justified in the rest of the Lawrence community, but could be justified in and around KU. So that's kind of the first piece there. As far as the routes themselves go, so we'll start with Route 1. So Route 1 differs a little bit from the Route 1 in scenario 1, a couple of key differences. So let me bring up my scenario 2. So the service is shifted from sorry. Do I have my right notes? So in scenario 2, you're operating between downtown and the Lawrence Community Shelter. So there isn't the connection to the East Hills Business Park, and there isn't the inner line that we talked about in scenario 1. So it's just closer access to the shelter. In this scenario, Route 1 continues down Massachusetts Street and hits the Haskell campus. So Haskell is directly served here and connected into downtown on Route 1 this way. So that's Route 1. The Route 3, in this scenario, it kind of reverts a little bit back to similar to the current Route 3, but in this scenario 2, it's interlined with Route 6, which is this route here. And the idea here is that these two routes are interlined both downtown Lawrence and on the north end in the industrial zone on north of 1800 Road. And so by interlining these 2 routes on both ends, it allows for bidirectional service both in the Michigan corridor and the Iowa corridor. So a bus coming north on the Michigan corridor, where there's a lot of multifamily and mobile home parks, a bus coming north once it gets to the end of the line, changes its head sign and comes back on Route 6. So it would go down the Iowa Street corridor, serving the Hallmark facility. And then vice versa, a bus going northbound on Iowa Street would come south along the Route 3. And so both of these corridors would have bidirectional service. And that's something that's currently lacking. And both of them would converge at LMH Health. So you do have the highest ridership corridor is served by both the Route 3 and the Route 6 in this scenario, and then they diverge, come back together, and they're interlined to provide bidirectional service on both corridors. That may have been a bit confusing, but hopefully people got that. Okay, so next we have Route 4. Route 4 is similar to the existing Route 4. So instead of connecting North Lawrence along the 6th Street corridor to points west, instead it's an extension of the current alignment down to the Bob Billings hub. So it still serves the Merck Co-op, but then it continues further south and ends at the Bob Billings hub. And that's the primary difference from the current Route 4. One other difference to note is the shift of service from Lion Street to North Street, just as we talked about in scenario 1. Okay. Now, Route 5. Route 5 in this scenario is very similar to in scenario 1, except it also dips down into the Haskell campus, and it is no longer interlined with Route 1. So it's a standalone route in this case. Route 6, we just talked about. Route 7. Okay, so Route 7 is, again, kind of similar to in scenario 1, where we connect the Haskell Avenue corridor down to the retail and South Iowa corridor. But there's a shift in service to 11th Street to allow for closer access to Just Food. So this is shifting service from the previous version of the route that looked like this. It was operating on 13th Street. Instead, we're shifting it to 11th Street to get closer to Just Food. So that's Route 7. In this scenario, Route 7 is interlined, but it's interlined with Route 9 in a slightly different way. So we heard about the importance of connecting Lawrence Avenue and neighborhoods along Lawrence Avenue to Lawrence High School. And so that is achieved here through an interline at the reserve. So people that come in on Route 9 can stay on the bus, and then they can continue out on Route 7 and have a one-seat ride to Lawrence High School. Route 9 in this scenario operates along Wakarusa, all along Wakarusa, where in scenario 1 we had a gap. There was no service in parts of Wakarusa in scenario 1. Here, that service is restored. And here, Route 9 does serve the new apartments, the multifamily housing communities north of 6th Street along Wakarusa, and then it serves Rock Chalk Park and the LMH West Campus. All right. Route 10. Route 10 here is similar, a little bit different than Route 10 in scenario 1. In scenario 1, we had service in Wakarusa, which would be served by Route 9 in scenario 2. So that goes away in Route 2. And we instead shift service to 6th Street and then down Castle down to Bob Billings. The 6th Street service is meant to make up for the change that we talked about earlier on Route 4, where Route 4 would not continue out on the 6th Street corridor as it does in scenario 1. Instead, it dips down to the Bob Billings hub. So this is the Route 10 in scenario 2. All right, now I think here's where it's going to get interesting for this audience. because we're going to be talking a little bit more about KU access. So Route 11 in this scenario is a route that is interlined with a
I'm sorry,
proposed
Boris.
route.
I just before we move on, I just see Anoop asked about a question about Route 10. So go ahead and chime in, Anoop. Okay.
Yes. So I see the Route 10 has been modified completely. So there were two questions. I was wondering about what does Bob Billing Hub means? Like, is it a new bus stop?
Yeah, Adam, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I can speak to that, Anoop. Yeah, I can speak to that, Anoop. So
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I was wondering, like, I'm a KU student, and I was wondering, is the Bob Billing Hub is like the new bus stop?
Yeah, so I can explain that a little bit. So
yeah, so where is that bus stop exactly? I can see. So I think the 11 and 10 both starts at the same bus stop. Something looks like.
Right. So for about a decade, our transit system has been operating out of most bus transfers happening downtown.
Okay.
And there has not been a permanent location for bus transfers to occur. And it hasn't been very central. So we are planning for a new transfer center at Bob Billings and Crestline. That will be a place where up to 8 buses at a time can transfer between different routes. There will be an actual facility with restrooms, customer service, lobby, that sort of thing. So it's not a place that exists today, but we're planning on that being ready to go in August of next year, which is when these routes would begin.
Okay. So the thing is, I just saw that the Route 10 has been completely modified, like it either going towards completely from the Bob Billings to Wakarusa and then going towards the 6th Street. I think it's modified from the Castle. So it is taking a right turn on the Castle and then going to the 6th Street. So are there any buses that goes straight to Wakarusa Drive from Bob Billings Wakarusa Drive anymore?
So there wouldn't be a bus that travels just along Bob Billings to Wakarusa Drive. Is that? Let me bring up.
Because if you see on the 15th and Wakarusa, we have our KU lab, which is the Center for Environmentally Beneficial Catalysis or the Life Sciences. So if you point towards, I don't know which, is this Wakarusa? Yeah, if you see on this side, 15th and Wakarusa, there is a Life Sciences Research Building just at the intersection over here. If you click down, if you take it a little down.
Or is he talking about southwest of the corner?
Yeah, this one.
That's Wakarusa,
yeah,
it's opposite. Research area.
This one. Yeah, this one. This arrow. Yeah. So this is our lab, which is the Life Sciences Research Lab, which is a chemical engineering research lab, basically. And a lot of PhD students and master's students and undergrads work here. And we always heavily rely on the bus 10 to go to and fro to the campus, because several reasons. First of all, we attend our classes. So we go and come back. We go to the campus for central facilities, things like NMR lab, electron microscopy lab, or workshops and several things. And this is our fastest route to go and come back to do our research work or whatever. And because the campus is like, they charge for parking. So we all take the buses to go. And I just saw that it is being completely removed. So it's going to be very difficult for us to go to campus. Like even if we try to take the 9th and then go towards 31st and then take 11, it's going to take like an hour, more than an hour, or like.
Yeah.
Or depending on how the bus matches.
So yeah, Anoop, did you see the presentation of scenario 1, or did you just join us recently?
Oh, I just joined now because I had a meeting before this, so that's why I thought.
I see. So in scenario 1, there is service on the route 10. There's 2 versions of route 10, 2 different scenarios. What you saw is this one. Okay. This was the first scenario. So it connects to the Bob Billings hub, and then there would be fast and frequent connections from campus to the Bob Billings hub. And like one example would be this route 100, which would run very frequently, let's say every 10 minutes from campus to the Bob Billings hub, and then you would have this
Yeah,
route
yeah,
10.
yeah.
So one of those obviously is more preferable to you. The
Yeah, yeah.
other scenario may be more preferable to somebody else. We hope. I mean, we'll make note of what you're
Yeah.
telling us.
I was just realizing, because I just realized we all go, and someone yesterday pointed me out, hey, you should go and watch, this is happening. I was like, what is happening? And then they told me, I was like, okay. So I thought, let's join today and see what is the new change, because not many people actually, especially students, are not really interested. Whenever they get any email from transportation, they usually skip it. I don't know why. Possibly.
Maybe since you just joined us, we should back and repeat the info from the beginning of the meeting, which is these two scenarios, we're taking feedback, and then they will be synthesized into a final proposal that will then also have an opportunity for feedback.
Yeah, sure. That's why I just thought of giving my opinion of this is what is with the KU students. Maybe all can decide at the end.
Yeah, well, if there's other, as we go along, if there's other trips that you make frequently and you want to point them out, we'd love to hear them.
Sure.
Okay, so
the most people I've seen here, we uses the 9, 10, and 11, basically.
Okay. I would say this is also an opportunity, because this is, again, kind of one of those situations where there would be a microtransit option in that corridor, correct? Yep. So, or there could be. So, again, it's one of those things where, understanding exactly what that looks like, it would hopefully be a good alternative scenario and not a worse alternative scenario to have a microtransit connection straight down Bob Billings.
Will there still be 2 buses, right? That goes down, up and down, basically?
Well, the number of buses is something that we don't think of it in terms of number of buses. We think of it in terms of frequency of service.
Frequency of service.
Yeah. So to achieve a certain frequency, obviously you need a certain number of buses, but that's the number of buses is a little bit irrelevant. We want to ensure that there's the right frequency of service on every route. But that's not. We haven't gotten to that point yet. Okay. We're first talking about coverage. In other words, where should service go, and then we will make recommendations on frequency.
Okay. Understood.
Joe?
Yeah, I was going to ask if at certain times of day, there's a lot more students on the bus, like in the mornings and in the late afternoon. And I'm wondering if any thought has been given to having more like a direct service from certain places at certain times of day that maybe are not part of the fixed, the regular daily fixed route system, like, down Clinton Parkway, like out like west of Castle, there's a bunch of apartment buildings and a bunch of students who take like the 29 or whatever to campus. So I'm wondering if, like, say in the morning, like before 10, or in the afternoon after 3 or 4, maybe there could be a commuter kind of route, as it were.
Sure. I mean, that's done. Sometimes there are kind of overlay services to deal with overcrowding, if that becomes an issue. What I thought you were going to ask about is whether it's been considered to have variable schedules. In other words, during peak periods you have higher frequency, during off peak you have lower frequency, and that's not something that's been done. It's not something that's currently being done for most Lawrence Transit routes, but it is something that is very likely going to be recommended to identify the times of day where higher frequency is justified, and then times when lower frequency is justified, in order to preserve resources and put service where it's needed most.
Yeah, I was also addressing the issue of like buses going directly to KU, like without having to go through the hub. I'm sure you all have run the numbers and figured out like how much ridership you're going to pick up versus how much you're going to lose. But, I teach at KU, so I know the student body, fairly well. And just like the more obstacles you put, the more steps there are to go through. I mean, the less likely they are to do it.
Yeah, no, those are all really good points. I mean, what we hope to do is identify maybe how we can achieve what you're describing through interline opportunities. In other words, if you have a route that ends, comes from different directions, but goes through the hub, maybe there's opportunities to through route, what's called through routing, where you take 2 routes and you interline them to achieve what you're describing, and even though most people may not be riding through, some significant subset is. And so you can market that in, for example, you pick up a schedule for one route, and at the end of a particular trip, it says this bus continues on to bus X or to bus Y. So people know if I just stay on the bus, I'll have a one-seat ride through to some other destination. So that's something that can be considered as well.
Boris, this is Quiz. One other point I kind of wanted to just hit on real quick to Joe's point about teaching, and again, this has been for several years now. A lot of the routes have been designed to get students, to and from class right before class starts, right? And so we're now looking that if those traditionally have been 30-minute headway, to get students there 10 minutes earlier, 5 minutes earlier, right before classes start. If we do throw something else in there that now makes it, getting to class now 5 minutes later, the students now looking at the opportunity of having to catch that bus, one whole trip earlier just to try to get to class still on time, if that kind of makes sense. I know what I'm trying to say, but so we'd still have to kind of try to, we still have to try to find a way to get students to campus at 10 till and 5 till if classes are on the hour, or or 20 or 25 after if they're on the half hour. So
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's go on to 11, and we'll talk about 11 and 38 together. Mindy, this I think is going to be of interest to you in particular. So these two routes, the 11, which is the blue line shown here, and the 38, which is the red line, these two routes are both designed to get people from the hub, Bob Billings Hub, through campus, and then down through areas of very high density student off-campus housing, as well as retail destinations. So, and it's an inner line again. So the 38 would travel through campus via the Irving Hill Road, and 18th Street. Then it would come down Stewart to pick up, again, multifamily housing through there. Then down Clinton Parkway and pick up the various apartments that are south of Clinton Parkway. And then those folks are and then this route comes into, it does the loop of the retail areas and apartments through here, Walmart, Target, and then ends at the Reserve. Whereas the blue line, the 38, then takes over, and it serves the apartments on the other side, on the east side of Iowa, comes up Naismith Street. It's a bit more direct, goes through the heart of campus, Naismith to 15th, and then ends up at the Bob Billings Hub. So these have a much more direct penetration of campus, and they are intended, and these are long routes, but very few people would be riding all the way through, because most people would come. There's the biggest concentration of housing is in through here. So people may choose this route or this route to get to campus more directly. They also would have direct access to retail because these two routes would be interlined, meaning they both would serve Target and Walmart and other retail destinations in through here. So does this look any better to you in terms of the needs of foreign students?
Well, are they both going both ways then?
Yes, they're both going both ways. Yes, exactly. So the red line would come this way, get to the Reserve, and then do the blue line. The blue line would come this way to the Reserve, and then do the red line. So in effect, both lines would have bidirectional service.
Yeah, I mean, I think this looks better, because it actually goes up on campus. It's, helpful. And then there's the Route 100 that goes between the service center to downtown. So I think that would work. Because I know for our students, those are the big ones, and we have to have internships that take students, in much different places. But, I think these are some big ones for international students, at least ones that live on campus.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the way that we always intended this to happen is, these may be more popular from scenario 2. We can combine it with Route 10 from scenario 1, and then slowly build a hybrid scenario that hopefully meets the needs of the greatest number of people possible. So glad you are on this call. All right, so that's the 11. Let's continue to the 27. 27 is unchanged from before. It connects all the educational institutions in Lawrence, not all, but a good number of them. The 29 is also unchanged. So that's the fast connection to the Bob Billings hub from the neighborhoods south of Clinton Parkway near Wakarusa. 100 is also unchanged from scenario 1. And 34 is unchanged from scenario 1. 36 and 38 are a bit different. So let me bring those up. Okay, so 36, the 36 is very, very similar to the current 36 with one main difference. The current 36 ends south of 6th Street. It turns around here on, I believe it's Sonic Drive, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
That's
Gateway. It goes
Gateway.
around Sonic.
Yeah, Gateway, right. Oh, Sonic Drive. Sorry. Yeah, Gateway. There's a concentration of apartments through here where there are a lot of students. Instead, we are recommending that it do a kind of terminal loop north of 6th Street. There's an apartment complex here called the Frontier, and it's a fairly large apartment complex. So by doing a loop this way, it captures another multifamily housing complex where students could choose to live. It also serves the folks who live in the apartments here would still have access. They just need to make their way to 6th Street to catch the bus. They wouldn't even have to cross the street if they're going into campus. They just pick it up on the same side of the street, although they would have to cross the street coming back unless they wanted to ride around and then get off on the way back in. So that's 36. Then 38, which we talked about already, and 41 and 42, which restore. 41 and 42 are very similar to in scenario 1, except instead of extending to the Union, both routes instead do the same kind of campus one-way loop with Sunnyside and Jayhawk Boulevard that the current 41 and 42 do. So I'm curious, Mindy or anybody else that's sort of affiliated, Anoop maybe, do you have a preference on whether if you had to choose between service on Sunnyside and service to the Union, which one of those is preferable?
I mean, the loop there gets you so close to the Union. I mean, it's, not even a 5-minute walk. So, I mean, going up to GSP, like the other routes were, that's good for the people that live up there, but I don't think there's a huge population of students. I mean, there are quite a few apartments up there, so, maybe, but it's a flatter area, so it's a little bit more difficult, and there's, other transportation. So I think that one's good, but I'm not sure it really matters for our international students per se. I don't know, Anoop, do you have any
Like I've seen
thoughts?
41. I've always seen the 41, but we usually we go to West Campus because there are a lot of labs available. So we usually come to campus and take 41. We have taken 39. I don't know which is 41 and 42 that goes from the dorm areas. I don't remember exactly now.
Yes,
It should be the 41
and
it's a
Yeah,
41
and 11.
Okay, so usually I've seen the 41. Maybe we have taken 41 a lot recently. That goes from so we take the bus stop from the College of Engineering. So it should be 41. But I have also taken the 43 in the past, where we used to go to the Hayward lab, which is here near the Naismith Drive, basically. So I think the 43 also is a better route that is being shown right now, because it goes through Naismith 19th, which is another kind of route where people live along. There are a lot of dorms here.
You're talking about the current 43. Okay.
The green one is the current, right?
No, this red line is the current 43, and it actually is the proposed 43. There's no changes proposed for the 43.
Okay.
The green line is showing the 41, and this
Okay,
is the current 41 looks like this, and
Okay.
it does a one-way loop, and then
Okay.
it loops through here. So the main difference is we're proposing to send it down Naismith to get it closer to the rec center and
Okay.
19th Street versus Irving Hill.
Wasn't 42 bus is the bus that goes through the rec center and the Watkins Center?
So the 42 does. We're proposing a different 42. So let me show you what we're proposing. So this is, I'll turn off 41. This is the 42 that we're proposing. It would operate from the Bob Billings Hub through Irving Hill Road to the rec center, and then this loop and then back.
Okay. Yeah, I think this change is also good. So people from the West Campus can also go here through the rec center as well, which is a direct route, basically. So yeah, I like the 42 and the 43 both.
And I know the 42, I think it is now, like right there, you know, going past Naismith Hall to the rec center, that is like a really busy route right now.
Yeah.
So busy that, you know, if you take it too close to class, that you're not going to get on it.
Yeah, the issue, the current 42 provides mostly one-way service. So that's one of the reasons I believe that it's so overcrowded, because people are forced to stay on longer than they would like to. There's kind of the overlap of people who are already on the bus and are trying to get off, and new people getting on because it is one-way service. So in this scenario, most people's trips would be shorter. So if, let's say you're at the rec center, or let's say if you're in the heart of campus, you can go to the rec center. If you're West Campus, you can go to the rec center. But most people are not going to be riding through beyond where they actually want to go, with the exception of this end of the line loop.
Okay. So I had always a question, like the 41, 42, 43 are the internal circulating buses that goes to smaller areas from West Campus to our campus mainly. So they don't run in the summer, right? Or they do run?
So they don't
41
run.
has a B schedule, but 42 and 43 do not.
Okay, so 41 does runs on B schedule.
Yeah. So Anoop, I'm not sure you saw the discussion, but we talked earlier about the possibility of what's called microtransit service. And microtransit service operates like Uber and Lyft, but it uses buses that are more appropriate for transit, more appropriate for shared rides like minivans or cutaway like small minibuses. So we kind of envisioned having either the entire city and maybe an overlay at KU be served by microtransit, meaning you dispatch it from your cell phone. So the vehicle comes to you as needed. Is that something that you think you and your peers would be interested in using?
So is like the one that you're telling from going from our lab to campus or maybe West Campus?
It would go wherever you would want it to go. So it's a zone, it's a zone structure. So let's say the zone would be this boundary here, this red area.
Okay.
So within that zone, you could take it from, it will be very much like Uber.
Okay.
You dispatch it like, have you used Uber before?
Yes.
Yes. So you would use it within the confines of the designated zone. In one scenario, in the first scenario, there are 4 zones, and so you can use it within each zone. You can't go beyond the zone. In the second scenario, you can use it citywide, but it would be a distance-based pricing.
Okay.
The reason I bring this up is because in the summer, when some of the routes that you are used to using during the long semester, when they're not running, this could be an option for you to use it on demand. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think especially the campus is not a big issue because there are still few buses like 11, 10, they do run on some in the summers because I think.
But they might not on these new schedules.
Oh, they might not on this new schedule? Not even on, so that means in the new schedule, on summer times, they won't even run on B schedules?
This would be something that will be in the last scenario. This
Okay.
particular scenario is just talking about what path they would take.
Mhm.
Yeah, the schedules are to be determined. But regardless of what they are, it's very likely that there will be some routes that are not running during the summer. I mean, that's a very likely scenario. So if that's the case, we
Wait,
hope
sorry.
to.
Isn't 10 the city route basically?
10 and 11 right now are city routes. Yeah, I think so, right?
Yes,
They are.
the ones that don't run in the summer now are anything numbered 30 and higher. So everything
Okay.
below that number is normally runs year round right now.
Okay. So they will run. So that is at least good because the way, so about 30 are usually the internal circulating buses, like the campus buses or the bus which goes towards I think except the 38 that you showed just now. The other one. So when you say, so yeah, if there is something called micro transit, and if it is at cheaper rates, then that can be affordable to students who are a little bit far away from the campus, and they would like to visit the campus during those times. So I'm not sure how cheap it will be, or like is it like a safe ride thing, right? You just book it through app. The only thing is you have to pay
Exactly.
it, basically.
Well, it may, the fares is also a topic that we still need to determine. If you're in scenario 2, where you have the citywide service and the KU service, there, if you're a KU student, you may be able to use one of the zones free of charge, or not technically free. It would come from your student fees, but the citywide zone, you may need to pay a fare. Typically, it's not very expensive, at like $2 or $3, or up to $5. But that's how this is envisioned.
So because I usually take the nightline services when safe ride don't work in sometimes summer or in fall break or like something like that, they charge like $2. You just book it basically. Basically, and that was also a best thing that we usually do during when safe rides don't work. Like especially
This is similar. This is very similar. It's a little bit more refined, maybe you could say. It's the interface is more like Uber and Lyft, but it's similar to what you're describing with Safe Ride.
Okay, because I'm not sure if the nightline services can be used over there. That basically, you just do a pre-booking thing or something, or even an app booking can also in an advanced way, because nowadays we are still doing the phone booking for the nightline.
Correct. So this would also, in these scenarios, replace the nightline. So instead of having the nightline,
we can also work in the daytime, basically.
In the daytime, in the night, and it would be dispatched from an app. Yes.
That would, because that will serve the purpose when buses are not running, and based on the number of people booking the rides, that's the only way the buses can work. So they don't have to worry about just roaming around without having passengers within.
Exactly.
Right. So if the nightline service can also be activated during the daytime as well, during these times when buses are not running, that can serve the purpose. And that the fees also are minimal, like $2 is not a bad for KU student. They can afford easily.
Right.
I guess one of my concerns is, like Joe said, that a lot of students, especially domestic students, I think even more than international students, are going to take the path of the least resistance. If they can get free within the KU area, or low cost microtransit, they're going to want to do that instead of the buses. So my thought is, like, we really need to incentivize them to take the main lines somehow.
Very good thought.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
No, it's a really good thought, actually.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Like,
and that's
the red zone is the campus zone, right? So if we reserve, or if we book anything to go to campus, will that be like a lowest cost or like a free of cost?
So the red, again, this is still to be determined, but the red zone may be during late nights when the fixed routes begin to phase out, and maybe on weekends as well. So we definitely want to take into consideration what Mindy is saying. We don't want to disincentivize fixed route use. We want to first and foremost incentivize people to use the fixed routes. When the fixed routes are not available, either geographically or by time of day or day of week, that's when we want people to consider the
Yeah.
microtransit service.
Exactly. What my point was the same. So is that when the buses are not running, like especially during the weekends or something like that, then we
Right.
can. Then my suggestion was the same as Mindy said, basically.
Yeah.
Using the daytime transit period, like.
Yep.
Something.
Okay, so the last route that I didn't cover, but I'll just quickly cover, is the 43. That's the last route, and it's the same. It's the same one as in scenario 1, and it's the same one as current. So no changes there. And that gets us all the way through both scenarios. Are there any chat comments that I should address, Adam?
I don't believe so. I was looking here. I just sent one. Joe would ask a question about ridership, and I can share that with the group. So just a question about percentage of students in our current ridership. And I'll answer part of this and let Margareta correct me or add on. But in a non-pandemic year, typically have around 3 million rides, and about 2/3 of that is attributed to KU students. And I believe on city-only route or the city-funded routes, I believe it's around 15% of those rides KU students. Is that in the neighborhood?
The city routes that don't touch campus, the last time I did a tally, it was 17% KU ridership. The city routes that do hit campus have around 85% KU ridership. That's Route 10 and 27. And then the coordinated routes that are co-funded by both of us have around 95% KU ridership. And the KU routes have 99% KU ridership.
And the ones, that would be like the number 11?
11 and 29, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 11 is huge.
Okay.
Wow.
Sorry, go ahead. Is there a comment?
Oh, no, I was just exclaiming over the high percentages of students.
Oh, yeah.
It was a surprising number to me too when I did it. I was surprised that it was that high.
Well, I mean, even students that, commute in, they don't want to leave their cars because, you leave your cars and try to go somewhere else. You lost your parking spot. You might not get another one. So, yeah. And I think, like if you could get rid of some of the barriers for some of these apartment complex and get them in fast, there would be even higher numbers of students riding. I could be wrong, but.
Well, and I think I'm making a very generalized statement when I say this. If there is a bus route that's going to an apartment complex, there's a lot of students riding it, obviously, instead of driving into campus. If there's, maybe a bus route that does try to go out west, that's where we start to see the timing maybe reach a longer threshold than maybe what the student wants. And that's where we'll start to see, more traffic driving in from those distances that are further out.
Yeah.
And in general, I'm making a statement that is, I don't want to say it's uneducated, but there's no data to back up what I'm saying. I think 95% of folks that live so far out at one of those big apartment complexes, I think if they choose to live out there, they have transportation. That's my general thought, but
You're probably right. And I mean, it might be something to consider, like, we could do like a smaller survey for international students in particular, about like where they live, which routes they take, what's their kind of threshold for time for getting into campus, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I mean, it's something to consider, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a focus group with international students if you would. I mean,
I just sent an email to Mindy to set up a meeting with us next week to talk about that stuff. Also, Mindy, there's a parking forum next week that has a survey attached to it that the broadcast message just went out while we were in this meeting. Okay. And it also has some what routes do you ride type of questions in it, just as part of our generic survey. And so hopefully we'll get some feedback through that, but we could certainly.
And that went out to the whole KU community, Margreta?
Yes. Should be in your email when you get back to it.
I'll ask Tiffany to try to highlight that in next Monday's, international student newsletter type thing. So,
well, in my email to you, I asked you about if I could provide some information. So please do look for that, and we could discuss.
Okay, sounds good.
So the last thing I wanted to just quickly touch on is the survey that Mindy, you said, and somebody else, I think, was it? I forgot, Elizabeth maybe. Somebody said that they had a little bit of a hard time navigating it. So it's on the Lawrence Transit website. Once you click on it and you get to the survey itself, there is a link called Interactive Map. And if you click on that interactive map, this is what comes up. And it's a little bit challenging maybe to figure out what to do with this when you first bring it up, but there's a little icon at the top, and that icon brings up a whole bunch of sort of this menu list. The menu list has the current system. You can zoom in and see it. You can then turn that off. You can see scenario 1 and zoom in to see it. Scenario 2 as well. Then you can turn those on and off. And then after those scenarios, you can actually go through route by route. And you can see, for example, current route 1, you click that on. And if you zoom in, that's what it looks like. Oops, zooming too fast. Hold on. Okay. Then below it is scenario 1, route 1 in a different line style, and scenario 2, route 1. So you can kind of see current, scenario 1, scenario 2. And that style is repeated for every group of routes. So after you're done looking at route 1, you can look at route 2 route 3 in the same way. Route 3 in scenario 1 and in scenario 2, and you can go through and compare any routes to each other. It's not the best solution maybe, because the color coding here is based on scenario. So if you were to look at, for example, scenario 1, route 1, scenario 1, route 1, and scenario 1, route 3, they both show up orange. So it's a little bit confusing that way if you're looking at them as a network. But a better way to look at them as a network is to turn on scenario 1, all routes. But that's how you navigate this. Hopefully you can get the hang of it once you really get into it. And then once you do look at the routes, you can go back and then maybe answer some of the survey questions that are posed here. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Okay, well, that is what we wanted to cover today. Thanks so much for all of the feedback, because there's really more feedback than we've gotten, at least that I've on the meetings that I've been on. So thank you so much for that. It really, really does help. And we, at the end of the day, want to develop a network that meets the needs of all the riders, KU riders, Lawrence Transit City riders, everybody. So in order to do that, we have to have feedback. We have to understand what's important to people, what their priorities are. So please fill out the survey if you can, spread the word about it, maybe help people figure out how to take it if they can't figure it out on their own. And yeah, so we'll await to see the results.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, have a good day.
Bye-bye.
All right.